If you're planning to promote your podcast through advertising, you might be asking yourself this question. Should I go more the local advertising route, maybe make it a little more niche to my audience, or should I really open myself up and go for more national or perhaps even international ads for my podcast? Well, let's break this down a little bit. Let's first focus on local advertising, which is the ability to focus in on a specific area where people are located. If you have a local podcast, right, it's about a specific community. Hands down, I would just go the local route. You could be very specific with that. You might even be able to meet your demographic in person and really make a personal connection. Don't worry about doing all the national and international ad placement stuff. Don't worry about any of that. You've got something gold, which is the ability to connect with your audience on a personal level. If I were you, I would get some marketing materials printed off because you could physically hand it to the people, right? I'd get some flyers, I'd maybe get some stickers and maybe some posters, and I would make sure you go to the big community events. Maybe check with the Chamber of Commerce, figure out what's going on, and then go in person and pass out this material. They're gonna love it because it's focused in on their community. Maybe you could use some of those posters, go to some of the local businesses that are popular in the area, see if they'll put your poster in their window. Maybe they'll even have some of your flyers at the checkout, right? So work that angle because you've got some most people don't have, and it can be really helpful. You could also look into running some local ads through the local media. Maybe they've got a newspaper. Sometimes they have little radio stations. You could even develop some sort of relationship with these media outlets. Maybe you help them by providing content from your podcast. Maybe you can do some sort of cross-promotional relationship. Maybe you've got an article that appears every once in a while in the local newspaper, and in that article, it covers something you've talked about on your podcast, and then it links back or tells people how to get your podcast episode. So there's some really cool things you can do if you're just focused in on a specific area. Now, if your podcast isn't local, I don't recommend getting all the flyers and the stickers and all that kind of stuff. It's probably not going to pay off. Now, let me give you a couple examples of this. I have a friend who used to produce a podcast, and it was all about skydiving. In fact, skydiving for women. And no matter where we went, she was a great marketer because everywhere we went, she had her marketing material with her. And the thing that she loved to do the most is leave her stickers in the bathrooms of pretty much any building we went into. She needed to be focused on people who love skydiving, not people who happened to use the latest bathroom we were in. I also have some personal experience with this while producing my pregnancy and parenting podcast. I live in San Diego and I happen to have a background in broadcast journalism. So when the local Fox station came to me and said, "Hey, how would you like to be part of our parenting segment for our morning show?" my mouth pretty much hit the floor and I was like, yes, that would be amazing. And in my mind, I'm thinking everyone in San Diego is now going to know about my podcast. That's over 2 million people. My podcast numbers are gonna go through the roof. Well, let me tell you what actually happened. And by the way, it was a really good experience. But I probably did that parenting segment for over a year. So I was on the news, on the morning show at least once a month. Do you know that my numbers never changed? Not even the day when I was on the news. I didn't even experience a little spike. Now, I did benefit from doing that in other ways, right? So there could be other benefits to doing it besides growing your audience. Now I have this great demo reel of me doing news segments, and I can send that to anyone else that wants me to appear on media to show that I can handle myself. So there are other benefits to it, but it did nothing to grow my numbers. Now let's talk about national advertising. And mainly with the marketing budgets you're probably going to use, we're probably talking about online ads, right? Google ads, YouTube ads, social media ads. And what I love about this is the ability to be laser focused on exactly who you're reaching out to, not based on location, but based on interest level, which is really great because if I have a knitting podcast, who do I want to reach out to? I want to reach out to people focused on knitting. So I start with the whole country, right? Or the whole world, but then it slowly narrows down on people focused on knitting. So if they're interested, if they're doing Google searches on knitting, they might be interested in knowing about my podcast focused on knitting. The big question you want to ask yourself with advertising is how can I reach the largest amount of people that fit my demographic? and that fit my budget. One of the most cost-effective solutions I've found is through expos and conventions. I've got a couple examples I want to share with you. I have a friend who runs the Horse Radio Network. It is a podcast network specifically devoted to horse enthusiasts. And he started with one show. He went to an expo. It was a horse expo, an equestrian expo, and he got to know the people. And he got his first sponsor that way. And he started telling people about his podcast. Now, this was in the early days of podcasting. Now he goes back to that expo and he practically runs the thing. He gets a huge stage. He says that's where he sells all of his sponsorships for his show. And he sells out for the whole year at one expo. He has a stage to himself. A ton of people learn about the show. It is perfect. I have an example too of expos working well, and that's when I'm producing my parenting and pregnancy podcast. There is an expo I used to go to. It's called the ABC Kids Expo in Las Vegas. This expo fit my demographic perfectly. And so it gave me an opportunity to not spend a ton of money, but to go, I wore a shirt that had my podcast name on it. I would go and I would talk to everybody at these booths. I'd learn about their products. For the ones I really liked, I would interview them. It gave me an opportunity to exchange business cards. Then later, once the video came out, I would share it with them. They had a chance to see me in action. And that led to a ton of sponsorship, really good sponsorship opportunities, because they got to see what I did. They had a chance to work with me personally. Now, that's an example of an expo that's focused more on advertisers, but we all have local expos that come to our area. If it's focused on the general public, maybe you get a booth space. Maybe you broadcast live from your booth. Set up some big lights, because big lights draw a lot of attention, and start interviewing people. Just have people set up for interviews throughout the whole day. Maybe you're broadcasting live on Facebook or Instagram, but people are walking past your booth the entire time. Make sure you have something set out at the end of the table, some marketing materials, some stickers and flyers and fun things like that. They'll talk about it, they'll share it with their friends. It's perfect. With either local advertising or national advertising, doesn't matter. Focus in on your demographic, try to make it personal, and you can't go wrong.